Ready to shine inside out? Welcome to Polished Beauty Podcast, where ambition meets empowerment. We talk business, beauty, brain, body. I am your host, Dr. Daisy Ayim, triple board certified cosmetic surgeon and OBGYN. Let's get polished. Welcome back to Polished Beauty Podcast. You guys, I'm so excited. I took a lovely break that I needed to do a mental reset and create a space for more creativity. So today's episode, after returning back, is very appropriate, and it is nobody warns successful women about the second act. This happens. Nobody warns them. Why? We spend the first half of our lives being told certain things. We're told to build a career. We're told to build a family, build that empire, build the financial security, build everyone up, build a reputation, build a life. And then guess what? One day you realize that I built it. Then what? You have built it. Then what? Right? Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe you've not done all the things you set out to do. Maybe there are things still pending for you to accomplish. However, but you've arrived at the place with most of the things that you had in mind, okay, that your younger self dreamt of. You've arrived. You've built it. Then here comes the most important question that nobody prepares you for, which is, what do I do now? You got it. What do you do now? Do you do more? Do you do less? What do I do now? And here's what this podcast is all about, right? I want to welcome all my listeners back. I took a much needed break, reset. And also during this time, as I mentioned, I got to have some space to create some things for my life, which I will share throughout this podcast, but mainly in the future to come, right? We hear endless advice from so many people about becoming successful, what they did to become successful, what they're doing to become successful. They give you advice, recommendations, steps, protocols, but very little happens. I should say very little is talked about. What happens after you've achieved the many things you set out to do? You've chased it, you accomplished it, you conquered. Then what? We're not talking about that. And that's a real thing. For women, especially successful women, the midlife can bring a lot of unexpected reassessment. It's not a crisis. Please don't make it into a crisis. It's just reassessment. And this is not necessarily dissatisfaction with your life. And it isn't about not being gratified or having gratuity of your life, truly. It's certainly just life reassessment, right? Sometimes you've simply evolved beyond the perspective of what you had or the life blueprint that was handed to you as you started building, right? And that was your younger self. Now in your 50s or the second act, things have to look and feel differently. So I think understanding the second act starts with something very simple, understanding what drove you in the first place, right? What drove you so much to do what you did in Act 1? And as always in my podcast, I like to put it into sections because I think it's very easy to conceptualize, remember it, and pivot with the information. So section 1, we're going to talk about Act 1. This is the years of proving. You've proven something, right? For many ambitious women, the first act is heavily lean on achievement. You got the education, you got the credentials, you got the career, you got the marriage, you got the motherhood, you got entrepreneurship down, you got financial independence. Compared to our parents, you learned to be financially independent. You got recognition, accolade, all those stuff. Basically, beneath all of these things, all this accomplishment is something that we don't talk about enough. Can you guess what it is? I know. Proving yourself to others, society. You are proven. You have to prove a point. That's not to say there's anything wrong with proving a point, but that's what you're doing. Okay. In your 20s, 30s, 40s, heck, even your 50s, there are certain things that you tell yourself while you're trying to prove, right? You say stuff like, I belong here. I am capable. I am intelligent enough. I can lead. I can compete. I can handle pressure. I can have a career and a family all together. I can take care of everyone. I can multitask. I can make my own money. I can succeed. I can do it all. I mean, you have that self-talk, right? For women who enter highly competitive careers that are male dominated, this is 10x because now you have a point to prove, and success is not, how should I put it? Success becomes evidence. I should say success becomes evidence, right? You're successful and you have to show the things that you're successful at. And that's that proven concept that I'm talking about. Every degree, every promotion, every credential, every business opportunity, every milestone in your business, every accomplishment, all of that is you proving yourself. You're like, see, I can do it. I got this. I am capable of this, right? And there's nothing inherently wrong with proving those points. Nothing wrong with that. Achievement can create independence. It can create opportunity. It can create enormous confidence. It can do everything you need to do. But eventually, everything changes. Something is going to change. You're going to change. You're going to evolve. And you've already done the hard work in your act one. So proving yourself repeatedly over, at some point it gets kind of, washed out. You're not excited about that anymore because you've picked at it. And, so your questions shift from, can I do this, to, do I still want to do this? Isn't that empowering to just say, do I still want to do this? The thing that you've always done and you've become so successful at, you ask yourself that question. And it's really important. The second act begins when capability stops being the question and desire starts becoming the question. Do you desire to do this? Do you desire to continue in this way? So there's something that's very uncomfortable about that thought process, because sometimes the life that proves as successful or what as something you've imagined isn't necessarily the life you want. So you might have been working hard to prove a point, working hard to get there, and you got it, and you realize that, heck, that's not what I wanted. Like, for real, that can happen, And so some few things here. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the golden handcuff. The golden handcuff is what I call, you get everything you wanted, but then you feel trapped. All right. And usually when we think of golden handcuffs, you're thinking financially, right? You make too much money to leave. You have built this lifestyle that depends on the income. So you're tied to the lifestyle. Your business depends on you. You can't take a break. You can't do anything because without you, the business crumble. But there's another kind of golden handcuff that I'm talking about here. Okay. That's very different that successful women feel. That handcuff, can you guess it? Identity. Your identity. Your identity is so important at this time because guess what? You have spent decades becoming it. You spend decades to become a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, executive, entrepreneur, expert, mother, wife, dependable one, successful one. You have spent time to become that. That is your identity, or is it? So eventually other people are invested in you because they know that version of you. That version of you is what they know, and they're invested in it. And changing it may feel irresponsible in people's eyes. You may even feel irresponsible because of how it's perceived by them. So people might say stuff like, hey, you've become so good at what you do and you've worked so hard to get this. Are you sure you want to pivot? Why would you want to walk away from something that you've built your whole life? Why? Or do you realize how many people would love to be where you are? That sentimental concern that could also be a guilt trip. All those things, perhaps they are correct. But here's what I want you to understand. It doesn't mean that you have to live the rest of your life in that context, in that decision making that you made at 30. I keep using 30 as a fun fact because you guys, I finished my OBGYN residency right at, I want to say 29-ish. Or 28, 29, something like that. And I worked in a year and a half in a faculty academic kind of practice. And then about 31, I kicked off my private practice. 31. I'm sitting here at 49. You do the math. So the woman that made the decision at 30, 31 to start a practice, does she still exist in her or in me today at 49? You know what I mean? So it's a very real thing to think about. And we have to know that our identity is so important because we've worked hard to build that identity, right? How much of our identity has become what we do? If the title disappeared tomorrow, who are you? If nobody knows your credential, nobody, I mean, knows your credential, would you still feel the same value you feel in doing the work you do? Just think about it. You know, if your business wasn't attached to your name, would you want to build the next business with no name attached, nothing? Our identity, as I mentioned, is something that a lot of women have, I don't want to use the word assessment, because that second act is sort of forces you to look at that identity differently and maybe walk away from it or redefine it, right? It's very important because you have to understand that this question means separating who you are from what you've achieved is very important, because both can kind of blend and become one, right? So your accomplishments are evidence of what you've done. However, they're not the boundaries of who you're allowed to become. Don't let your accomplishments be your boundaries. Really important, because that is that golden handcuff that I'm talking about. You are chained without realize you're chained, right? So the biggest shift I feel, which all of this leads to that no one is talking about, really is about changing the definition of success as time goes by. Because when you start at 30, you define success differently. When you start at 50, you define success differently. So your act one and act two may have completely different definition of success. And throughout the years, you may even redefine your definition of success. So I think is really important, because this leads into the second part of this podcast, which is, what if you don't need it anymore? What is it? That job, that career, that title, all of that. What if you don't need it anymore? For ambitious people, success is often measured by expansion, right? We think, we don't need this anymore. No, let's expand. Let's get more office, more revenue, more clients, more employees, more recognition, more responsibility, more followers, more degrees, titles. Let's get more projects. Let's get more zeros behind our earning potential, right? But eventually, more stops automatically becoming better. Just because you can get more, does it mean it's better? And this is where I really talk about this act two, right? Understanding that sometimes you don't need more. You need to do something else, right? I want you, if you're listening to this podcast and you're in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s, look at how you have changed, how things have evolved for you. At some point, your success at 30 is not the success you imagine at 50, right? And so it looks differently. Success at 30 might be build this empire, turn every stone, go hard, grind, get it, get on top, right? That is your definition of success. You're a fighter, you're a go-getter, you're on top of it. But at 50, success might be having the afternoon off on a Tuesday to do nothing, right? Because that changes. That doesn't mean that you're not ambitious anymore, honestly. It just means that you're becoming more intentional with your time. It means that you're becoming more intentional how you direct your ambition, where you focus your ambition on. And all of that is important, because this is a whole new matrix of redefining yourself. Remember the identity I talked about? This is a whole new matrix. Your matrix are what? Time, energy, aura, autonomy, health, meaningful work, relationship, experiences, peace, curiosity, freedom. You just kind of think differently in your act two, and as you're redefining yourself. It's really important to know that there's a difference between what looks impressive and what it feels like or whether it feels good to be in that appearance. Let me reward that because it sounded like a tongue twister. There's a difference between life that looks impressive and a life that feels good to live in. Completely two different things, right? Have you ever seen someone that you just think, oh my gosh, they look so amazing? Their life look fantastic. It's impressive. He's doing well. She's doing well. The kids is doing well. Everything is well packaged. You are impressed by it, you know? And sometimes they feel great in it. And sometimes they don't. You want to actually ask yourself that question when you are in that position. Is my life impressive to others? Yes or no? Do I enjoy the life that looks impressive to others, right? Sometimes it's a yes. Sometimes it's a no. The important thing is that successful women have to really give themselves permission to admit the difference. Like, really give yourself the permission to be raw and candid and truthful to yourself. It doesn't mean go online and blur out all your problems or blur out things. No, this is really a private moment that you look at yourself and look at what you've built and ask those questions and answer it for yourself, right? At some point, success stops being about how much you can fit into your life and starts becoming how much of life actually fits into you. How much of your life belongs to you? Completely different perspective. So I think that as we're going through and accomplishing or trying to become in the second act, there's something that is really huge that nobody talks about and nobody addresses it. And I'm going to talk about it today, right now. What am I talking about? Well, our bodies. It is our bodies. Unfortunately, in our 30s, in our 20s too, we're so young, we're resilient, our bodies is great, agile, functioning well, even into our early 40s. But at some point, our bodies are going to give away their expiration time on certain things. And we have to be mindful in about sustainability of our body as we're moving forward through Act 1 to Act 2, right? I mean, in our midlife, certain things happen to our bodies, whether we like it or not. It doesn't matter how much you take care of yourself in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. Some things are just going to change because that's part of aging. Hormones, sleep, recovery, metabolism, muscle mass, body composition, your energy, sexual health, sexual tolerance, stress tolerance, cognitive sharpness. All those things are going to be affected, right? And this is going to be the contrast between your 30s and your 50s. So it's really important to put that into your Act 2. Can this be sustainable with my body? All right. And that's something to keep in mind because the demands of whatever you do, your body has to be able to keep up with. So I think it's really fair to ask yourself a simple question. Can I keep living this way? Can I keep living like this? Whatever this is, right? So when you put that central into that decision-making process in your Act 2, you would choose wisely and well. And this is where we talk about health is wealth, right? Because I know that statement, you know that statement, but really embodying it is so important, okay? Because your Act 2 can shift from simple priorities like maintaining your muscle, protecting your bone, cardiovascular health, hormonal health, your nutrition, right? Sleep, mobility, mental stimulation, and also your emotional health. All those things in your Act 2 are so valuable because not because we're obsessed with getting older. It's just because honestly, it's something that is going to happen and we have to know the capabilities of our bodies. So I just don't want more years. All right. Me personally. And that's what I'll suggest to anyone. I want more life in those years. That is the definition of longevity. Having quality of life in the years that you have ahead of you. That is longevity. Hopefully, the years ahead of you is long as well. Now, it's really important for this ambitious, successful women as they go through Act 2 to think about some things, right? And I always say this, just ask yourself a very simple, silly question. Do, do they think I look good doing this? And if you answer that question, then that is not truly a good process for you because it shouldn't matter what they think and how you look. It should matter about what you think and how you feel you look, right? And also looking at yourself as a woman in this point in your life. You know, do you recognize the woman that you've become? Do you like the woman you've become? Do you enjoy seeing the woman in the mirror that you've become? And if you don't, do something about it. Do something about it. All right. Now, I want to transition us to certain things in the second act, okay? Because the second act is not a crisis. Please remember that. This is all about editing. You are editing your life, all right? Successful women are very good at a couple of things. And one of the things that they're really great at, successful women, adding responsibility, adding another project, adding another committee on their plate, on their portfolio, adding obligations, adding something to do for someone. All right. Women, they can get overwhelmed, but somehow they find a way to do it all. Right. And if they cannot, what do? They find a way to be more efficient. So they think about making their calendars better, getting more assistant, waking up early, changing their whole system, delegating, optimizing. And all those things are solution making thought processes. But there's one thing that they don't think about at all. Can you guess what it is? No, they don't think about stop. Just stop doing it. Yes, stop. Successful women have a hard time with that. They don't know how to stop. They don't even think about stopping because they believe that there's always a solution for whatever it is that presents in front of them. And they will not stop until they find that solution. I'm here to tell you that stopping is a solution. Okay. So you need to ask yourself, why are you maintaining this? Is it simply because you've always maintained it and that's what you always do? Or could it be something bigger? Okay, is it bigger because it's part of a business plan or a professional role or a friendship or, obligation, board position, lifestyle, habit, expectation? What is it? Is it your identity? Is that why you're doing this? So those things are important because I want you to keep this in mind. Editing your life doesn't mean that you don't like act one of your life. It doesn't mean that at all. And it also doesn't mean that you're not having gratitude for your act one in your life. Okay. So you don't need to hate your act one, simply put, because you have something next coming up. Not at all. All that means is this: the second act isn't a crisis. It's just an edit. You are editing your life in your act two. So you're deciding what deserves to come forward with you, what deserves to stay, what deserves to go, what deserves to get smaller, what deserves more attention, and also what no longer gets access to you. People, situations, whatever it is. Not everyone needs to have access to you because your act two is really intentional and you're making the decisions for yourself. Honestly, when you think about act two, you really have to have a huge, huge courage to disappoint people, because you have spent act one building trusted relationships, dependable relationships, accountability relationships, and they have come accustomed to this. But sometimes editing means disappointing people. The version of you who said yes to everything may not be part of your act two. Okay. She may not be convenient to everyone anymore. That woman who fixed everything, that woman that cared for everything, that woman that answered every call, that woman that looked for a solution for every problem that presented to her, that woman that showed up every single time and never needed anything from anybody. You are allowed to outgrow her in your act two. You are allowed to let go of her and develop and have a new you. You're allowed to it. If no one has told you this, let me be the first one to give you that permission. Not everyone has to understand the next version of you. Nobody. Only you do. So once you have created some space, and once you've created space and really think about your act two, it's very amazing to me that something wonderful happens to you in your act two, because you are now creating room for your mind to explore and think. And so something really happened beautifully in your act two. Can you guess what it is? Curiosity. You're allowed to be a kid again in your thought process, being curious. Remember when you have little kids, even if you don't have children and you're next to little kids, what do they do? ask questions. They want to know. They're curious. Their brain is going. This is what your act two is all about. That curiosity bug comes back and bites you in the butt. And that is a good thing because that takes us to the next step, the return of curiosity. And this is huge in your act two because the first act of your life is usually heavy on ambition, is usually heavy on building, scaling, going to the top, right? Your second act should be built on curiosity, completely different shift. And you need to explore some questions. These questions could be something simple like, what have you always wanted to learn? Okay. Or what would you study if you didn't have to prove to anyone anything? Just study for yourself. Or where would you travel if nobody knew about your trip? Okay. And you didn't have to be productive. Or what would you create if nobody ever bought? Like you have an idea to do something, invent something, and nobody's buying. Would you do it? That's part of the curiosity, right? Or my favorite one is what interests you simply because it interests you. What is it that you'd like to do that just gives you satisfaction and joy and is for you? Very important. Because, the funny thing is that, let me personalize this in this moment. When I went back to fellowship after practicing OBGYN for like 12 plus years to become board certified in cosmetic surgery, the most impression I got, or actually the most people told me was like, oh man, this is up. You're scaling up. No more OBGYN. You're going straight cosmetic surgery. That's amazing. There's more money. There's more this. There's more that. Everyone saw that, but no one really ever questioned my joy. Like what gives me joy? And I will tell you publicly, what gives me joy was the variety and the diversity of the portfolio that I've built. And that portfolio is obstetric, gynecology, and cosmetic surgery, all three. I didn't do one to replace both. I brought that to add to my portfolio to create what gives me joy, which is the diversity in what I do. And it's always exciting, right? But because cosmetic surgery has that je ne sais quoi, the money, the glams, the glitz, the bigger paycheck potentially, at least that's the perception that people have, they automatically assume I was going to drop OBGYN. And I've never have and never will because guess what? I love all three. So that's what I'm talking about, right? And the one thing about Act Two is that when you're starting all over, you have to answer those questions. It's very hard for ambitious, successful women to start all over because you have what I call beginner syndrome. You are worried about starting all over. You're so used to being competent, dependable, on top of your game, and all of a sudden you go in to start something that you know nothing about. That is scary, in all honesty. But you know what? It's a necessity to move into that space. Being very accustomed to what you've been doing and doing it every day for so long doesn't mean you need to continue with that. There's something very humbling and healthy about starting new and just asking a lot of questions and being curious and truly feeling like a kindergartner in that new space. Because guess what? You were once that low in what you're on top of right now. So curiosity is very important. In this new act, you may want to learn a new language. You may want to take up dance lessons in ballroom, You may want to learn photography. You might want to do tennis or become an expert in traveling the world. Whatever it is, you can absolutely do it and you will start at a beginner level. The most important thing I feel, and this is just my personal feeling, is that don't monetize it because your act two should not be about you starting a new business or creating an LLC out of fun and joy. You just want to embody it and go with the flow of enjoying it and not having the pressure to monetize it because not everything needs to be monetized. I'll tell you guys a fun fact, like with my Polished Beauty podcast, I have been approached to be sponsored for advertisement and other things. And I made an intentional effort when I started, truly was just to my curiosity to learn how to do podcasting, to bring the information in my practice online for my patients, and then just grow it and build a community. It wasn't to monetize and make money. I always knew money would come because the quality would be there, but it wasn't a focus. And it's still not a focus at this moment. I'm not to say that later on it will not be, but it's not what drove me to get into the space. So it's my humble opinion. You don't have to take it, but that's what I'm thinking. The second act may be less about proving that or proving what you're good at. Truly, it's just more about discovering what makes you feel alive, what makes you feel like you're living a very rich and healthy life, which really takes me to the last part of this podcast, which is basically 5 questions that I want you to write down and answer for yourself. So I'm going to give you a minute to get a piece of paper, a journal, and write these questions down. It's really important. And then you're going to answer it based on you. You're not going to answer it based on what other thing or what society would view it as. It's just basically what you would do. The first question, are you ready? What am I still primarily, let me start over. What am I still doing primarily because I've always done it? Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it because you've just done it for 20 years, for 30 years, for 40 years? Why? And then you need to explore that. Really get into it, get into the nitty gritty, because habit can disguise as obligation. So figure it out. Is this a habit or is it an obligation? And really get into it. That would take you to number 2. What gives me energy and what consistently drains it? So you have to identify the item. Is it draining you or is it giving you energy? You really have to go through and do kind of like that checkbox. Put your list and figure it out and answer which one it is. That would take you to number 2, to number 3, because you would have identified the patterns in your life and then you know how to handle number 3, which is, if nobody were impressed by my life, what would I still choose? Right? What if nobody was impressed by what you do? Would you do the thing that you're doing? Because that's what you should be doing, right? Impressing yourself, enjoying yourself, following your joy. And what if nobody took notice of those things? What if the applause was removed, the social media followings were removed, the title was removed, and everyone's expectation of you was removed, and it was just you? What remains? Are you going to pursue it or not? And then question number 4, what am I curious about right now? Like, what really piques your curiosity? What is it that you want to learn more about or know more about or do more about, right? You have to really, really ask that question, okay? Because it's very simple, not what you should accomplish. Don't think of it as, oh, I need to accomplish this big goal and I need to do that. No, it really needs to be very much on the surface. Like, what generally interests you? What do I like to do at this point in my life, right? And number 5, drum roll, what would make the next 10 years extraordinary? Not merely successful, extraordinary. It could literally be what you're doing in Act 1 that you're trying to do Act 2, but you need to make it extraordinary. It cannot be the same old, same old. Something in it has to be extraordinary, and that's a big one, right? Perhaps, master a new skill to be so successful at it that is extraordinary. Okay. But that's a question to ask. And you've gone those 5 questions. I hope you wrote it down and just play with it. Play with it as you're navigating through to your next cycle in life. To conclude this podcast, there are some things that I need for us to understand. There's one final thing, and I want all successful women to really understand this, okay? The second act does not require you to destroy the first act. So just because you go into your second act doesn't mean you need to speak ill of your first act, destroy your first act, distance yourself from the first act. I mean, all those negativity regarding your first act should not exist, in my opinion, okay? So you don't need to hate that career. You don't need to leave that marriage. You don't need to sell everything. You don't need to move across the world. And certainly you don't need to manufacture a crisis that doesn't exist, okay? Honor the woman that built Act 1. She deserved her accolades. She deserved to be honored. She worked hard, she sacrificed, she failed, she learned, she became incredibly capable of doing so much. She got you here, basically. So we're going to honor her. We're going to love her. She may not be the same in Act 2, but we're going to give her flowers. All right. And you know what? This will allow you to make decision better for your second act when you can do that to your first act. All right. So I want us to understand some differences here. Maybe your act one was about proving to others, proven to the world, proven to society. Your act two, on the other hand, is going to be about choosing. You're going to choose yourself. You're going to choose joy. You're going to choose what you want. You're not going to prove, you're going to choose. Your act one may have been building an empire, building something that is memorable, building something that is going to be amazing. Your act two, on the other hand, is all about redefining what you already have, how you got it, and how you want to move going forward. Your act one may be about achievement, get the accolades, the degree, the recognition, the expert title. But maybe your act two is all about alignment. Does it align with who you are, what you want to be, what you're becoming, how your act two is moving? So alignment is huge, right? And your act one may have been all about becoming the woman that you are today, or you thought you were supposed to be, or you were supposed to have scaled to. But guess what? Your act two gets to be more about discovering who you are now. It's the discovery phase, is rediscovering who you are. That's what your act two is. In my opinion, it's not you starting over, because you're starting with experience, wisdom, resources, boundaries, and just a better starting point. Okay. You have clarity, understanding for what you want in your life and others, and therefore your act two is going to look and feel different. So maybe the act two isn't about creating an entirely new life. Maybe it's finally having the courage to make the life you've built make it feel like your own. Maybe that's all it is. You're just trying to own the life that you've built, and others benefited from it. They could still benefit in act two. You don't know, but truly it's about you owning the life that you imagine, because after all, you have only one life. So you have to live it to its fullest potential. Welcome back to Polish Beauty Podcast. I am so excited for the remainder of the episodes upcoming. There are going to be some changes, and there's going to be more of the same. The most important thing that I got from this break for myself, which I want to pass to you guys, is that Act 2 requires you to create space. And in that space, in that quiet moment, you will get some answers. I got some answers for myself because I needed to create that space. And it's bigger than the podcast. As I mentioned, as time goes on, you will come to learn some of the things that I rediscovered for myself in what I call Act 2. I'm currently 49 years old. I will be 50 years young in spring of 2027. So part of my journey to 50 is for me to reassess a lot of things in my life, including this beautiful practice that I've created when I was 31, and just everything. And I am so excited about Act 2, and I will be sharing when it's appropriate with you guys as time goes on. Thank you for tuning. As always, leave a comment and let's discuss further. Have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for listening. Video recording of this episode will be featured on our YouTube channel, Dr. Daisy Ayim. We are also found on Instagram at Polish Beauty Podcast or at Dr. Daisy Ayim. Remember, new episodes drop every Wednesday, so stay tuned. Please like, share, follow.